Hey guys, so I want to talk to you about being a Noah or being a neighbor. And instead of going straight to the story of Noah, I want to start out in Luke chapter 13, verse 23. We're going to go 23 through 27. So here it is, Luke 13, 23 through 27. It says, someone asked Jesus, Lord, will only a few be saved? So the question is, who is going to be saved? And this should be like the key and the core question of our lives, right? Who's going to heaven? Am I going to heaven? Where does eternity get spent? And Jesus replied, work hard to enter the narrow door to God's kingdom, for many will try to enter, but will fail. I mean, that should make us pause. That should maybe even scare us a little. I'm not saying it should, but it does scare me a little bit, right? It should make us consider at least and perk up our ears and go, wait, okay, so many are going to try to get into the kingdom. Many are going to want to go to heaven, but they're not going to be successful. What's that about? And then he says, when the master of the house has locked the door, it will be too late. You will stand outside knocking and pleading, Lord, open the door for us. But he will reply, I don't know you or where you come from. So you're going to be outside the door when it's too late. Like you've essentially, I guess, realized that you've ended up going to hell instead of heaven, right? And so you're going, let me in, right? Let me in. Then you will say, but we ate and drank with you and you taught in our streets. Like, hey, we were around you. We had fun with you. You know, there's that time when you were really nice to us. What about that? I thought we knew each other. I thought we were buddies. I thought we were pals. And the master will reply, I tell you, I don't know you or where you come from. Get away from me, all you who do evil. So we've got to address the people's confusion. The people who didn't go through the narrow door, the people who didn't go to heaven, though they're saying they're now in hell and they're like, yeah, I really want to go to heaven, knocking on the door. Why don't you let me in? The master's saying, I don't even know who you are, where you come from. And the reply is, what do you mean you don't know us? I thought we had fun together. I thought we had some good laughs together. This knocking on the door is analogous to when Noah's built this ark, right? And there's these people, right? So many people who God is sending this flood because they haven't been obeying God. They haven't been living the right way. But then the rains come, right? And it's starting to flood and the people are starting to get worried. And then they start beating on the door of the ark and say, let us in. We were wrong. Oops, right? Maybe we shouldn't have lived the way we lived. Maybe we shouldn't have made fun of you, Noah, for building this ark, because now we recognize that we were wrong. We recognize that we should have lived differently. I hope it's not too late. Please let us in. Noah's like, yeah, the ark is already starting to float. We've already got too much water coming up. If I open the door, not only will you get in, but the water will get in and we'll all drown. I'm sorry, it's too late. Can't open the door. Here's the interesting thing. It is really easy. So we've got Noah and we've got his neighbors, right? We've got Noah and his neighbors, right? And it's really easy for 95% of our life, maybe even, you could even say 100% of our life here on earth, or right up to the very end, to live more like the neighbors, right? To live for ourselves, to live however we want to, right? And it's really difficult to live 99% of our life like Noah did. Noah is out there building an ark when it has never rained in human history, okay? But he's building an ark because God told him to, and everybody around him, his neighbors, are making fun of him. They were already making fun of him, right? Because he obeyed God and he acted different from everybody else. But now he's actually building an ark when there's no real water for it to float on. So they're making fun of him. It's much more difficult to live counter to the culture. It's much more difficult to obey God, especially when it doesn't make sense. Especially when you don't see the blessing, right? Because don't we have this thought of, if I obey God, then I get blessed, right? If I obey God, then I'll have good finances. If I obey God, my business will go well. If I obey God, my kids will grow up and they'll obey God and they'll listen to me and we'll have a great relationship. If I obey God, my marriage is going to be great. But that's not what happened with Noah for the majority of his life, or a big chunk of his life. He obeyed God. He just got made fun of by everybody. He didn't have, really any friends outside of his family. Probably his kids were even, embarrassed, for what he was doing. And I'm sure there was times where he said to God, are you sure? Like, why are we doing this? Could you make this a little easier? Could you give us a sign, give them a sign, something like that? And the neighbors the whole time. The neighbors were probably knocking on that door and saying, hey, Noah. They were appealing to him just like the people in this parable that Jesus tells were appealing to the master, or, the person who represents God in heaven, right? The people in the parable were saying, hey, but we ate and we drank together. We had laughs together. We had a good time together. I'm sure the neighbors were saying to Noah, as the rains were coming and the flood was rising, and they're beating on that door saying, Noah, don't you remember when we were in second grade, like when we were kids growing up together, right? And, and I helped you color and you showed me how to throw a ball, right? Or they were saying, hey, Noah, don't you remember you guys would come over and borrow some sugar from us, or some flour from us or whatever. When you guys ran out, don't you remember when we let you borrow that stuff? Okay, it's the same type of thing. But get this. Jesus befriending the people, right? Just like in the parable, right? Jesus befriending the people is not the same as the people befriending Jesus. Okay? Just because Jesus brought himself down off his throne, that's Philippians 2, off his throne in heaven, okay, and became one of us, fully God and fully man, and ate and drank and had a merry time with these people, had laughs with these people, had fun with these people, and taught these people. Just because he gave fully of himself, that does not mean that they're best friends, good friends. That doesn't mean that they have a relationship with God where they recognized in Jesus a Savior, a Messiah. It doesn't mean that just because Jesus was nice to them, that they in turn responded and did whatever was necessary to show that they recognize they need God, that they need Jesus, that their choice was to give up what they could have now for what ultimately was most important, for eternity. The people in the parable, the narrow door is to live our lives now like Noah did and not like the neighbors did. The narrow door is to do the harder things now so that we get eternity in heaven, not in hell, right? The wide door, the people who say, well, I tried to go through that narrow door, it didn't work. Those are the people living every day like the neighbors. And you know what? There might have been days where the neighbors were nice, okay? I don't think all the people in the whole world where Noah was every day were just, the worst, evil, mean people. I'm sure there was days where they're nice and they're like, hey, I tried. Well, you might have tried, but what you really lived for was yourself. Noah lived for God despite the challenges. The neighbors lived for themselves because they didn't want the challenges in that moment, right? They gave up eternity for now. Noah gave up now for eternity. And that's what Jesus is talking about in the parable. Are you going to be a Noah or are you going to be a neighbor? That's the question we face every day. Not just because it's important for our eternity, but because it's important for the eternity of the people around us in terms of being an example to them, inspiring them. Noah saved his family because he was a Noah, not a neighbor. Do you see that? Noah didn't just go through the narrow door himself. Noah was able to take his wife and his kids, his sons and their wives, and then generations to come through the narrow door because Noah chose to be a Noah and not a neighbor. Know that when you choose each day, the more challenging thing, the thing that's counter to the culture, the thing that might get made fun of, right? The thing that's not comfortable, the thing that's not what everybody else is telling you to do. Even your good friends, even maybe your Christian friends, right? Your church friends. When you choose the narrow door, When you choose to be like Noah, not only do you step through the narrow door, there's a really good chance you take those closest to you with you. And what could be a greater reward? What could be a greater gift? What could be a greater blessing in all of eternity than that? Don't live like the neighbors. They lived for now and gave up all of eternity. And frankly, because of that, so did their children. So did the people they cared about most. Instead, be a Noah every single day. Listen to what God has to say. Live for eternity. Live for Him, not for you and for the now. Not only will you go through the narrow door, there's a good chance you'll take those closest to you with you through it as well.